Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Reset Coffee Convos. I am John Voelz, owner of Reset Café by Day. And we, a year ago, did some coffee convos where we interviewed people who were vying for seats in different roles in our city, specifically some with city council. And that's what we are talking about today. And this is Kerri Howell with us today. Give her a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Room full of people here, Kerri. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you, John?
I'm doing well. I've got coffee. Are you a coffee drinker?
I'm a tea drinker.
Oh, that's good.
I have tea in my hand.
I like tea. We've been doing fancy afternoon tea at Reset these days, and it is super fun.
I heard. I've seen some good things online about it.
Yeah. Thanks. Kerri, you've been around Folsom for a while, and you have served in various capacities with our city. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing right now, what you hope to do? Give us your elevator pitch.
Well, I have been on the city council for the last 24 years, and I served on the planning commission for 4 years before that. I'm serving, at the moment, I'm the mayor, and this is the 4th time I've been mayor. So I was actually the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 5th female mayor of the city.
Oh,
with
wow.
with Sarah being the other female mayor. So I've been around a while. I've been around in good times and in bad. I've also represented the city on a number of regional boards and commissions. The Regional County Sanitation District, which operates the wastewater treatment plant that all of our wastewater goes to in Elk Grove. Sacramento Area Sewer District, which provides some of the pipelines that go to the plant. I served many years on the Sacramento Transportation Authority Board. I've been serving on the RT board for the last several years. The Sacramento Placerville JPA, which is basically the entity that owns the railroad tracks that go all the way up to Placerville.
Okay.
In Folsom, we've built a lot of trails within that easement. So served on that for, I believe, the entire time I've been on the council.
Okay.
I've served on the Regional Water Authority Board, a number of other regional boards and commissions that frankly are important to Folsom because it helps us with funding, it helps us with water management, transportation, keeping costs low at the various organizations like Regional Sand, for example. Several years ago, we had to build fairly significant modifications to the wastewater treatment plant because of changing state laws regarding outflows and what could and could not be dumped into the Sacramento River. So we were able to reduce the original project cost down from $2 billion down to about $1.2 billion, which at the end of the day saved a significant amount of money for all the ratepayers. So those regional boards and commissions are important, and we have been fortunate enough in Folsom over many years that the representatives from the city of Folsom who have served on those boards and commissions, because we've basically developed good, strong relationships with other elected officials in the region, because the majority of these boards are other elected officials. And Folsom has had perhaps a bit more influence in keeping all of those trains on the right track than we should have if you were to look at our population versus the larger population in the region. So those things are all important.
You said you've been with the city through good times and bad. What times are these that we're in?
The bad times most recently would have been the recession that started in 2007, early 2008, and lasted for quite a while. We had significant budget impacts because people weren't spending money. And during that time period, fortunately, we had significant reserve at the beginning of that recession because we ended up paring down, mostly through attrition, but some unfortunate layoffs. But the city staff in 2007 was approximately 600 employees, and we are now down to a little over 400. So we weathered that storm and built the reserves back up again, and now we don't know what's going to happen in the coming year or so, and we could be looking at another recession. Inflation is certainly hurting everybody. That question, whether we fall into a full-blown recession again remains to be seen.
Sure, for sure. And that's what those reserves are built for. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that we have a greater reserve right now at this time than I guess is, I don't want to say that it's necessary because you don't know what's coming, but as far as how it's been structured and what the city has said we need, we've eclipsed that number, correct?
But not by a lot.
Mhm.
The reserve right now, percentage-wise, based on the overall budget, particularly the general fund, is about what it was in 2007. And by the time we got to the end of that recession, the reserves had gone down to $3 million. So if we were to get into that situation again, we need to know that we have enough cushion to make it through whatever that financial difficulty is going to be. And the other difference that we have right now is that we track every year as part of the budgeting process, we track what's happening with predominantly sales tax and property tax, because those are the two main revenue streams that go into the general fund. And the general fund is how we fund public safety and all of the non-revenue employees. So public safety, there's no real revenue that comes in other than sales tax and property tax to pay for that. Things like the folks that work in solid waste and people that work in the water department, because those are funds that are set aside separately because ratepayers pay into that. So that's where many of those employees are paid from. But the other thing that's happening right now is that we are in the process, we completed negotiations with the FPOA, which is the Police Officers Association, and we are currently still in negotiations with fire and as well as Local 39. And if you add together all of those employees, that's the vast majority of our city employees are in one of those three represented groups. And we historically have wanted to ensure that our employees were paid, above the median for the region. And we have fallen behind in that. So we're going to be giving raises and changes to contracts until we get Local 39 contract completed and the fire department contract completed. And the disadvantage by comparison to the other agencies within the region is that everybody else, with the notable exception of Elk Grove, has passed a sales tax measure. So as an example, and Elk Grove just put one on the ballot, so they may or may not pass it. But as an example, the city of Folsom's sales tax has been very flat for the last 3 years or so, starting with Amazon, and then full blown during the pandemic because nobody was out shopping. And we know how many retailers we lost during that time period. And many people have chosen that they're going to do all their purchases on Amazon, which means that the city's not getting tax revenue out of that. Having said that, our tax revenue annually is about $20 million, and our property taxes is a bit more than that. Out of the 7.25% sales tax that we all pay here in Folsom, only 1 cent of that money goes back to the city. So if we had moved forward with the sales tax initiative that we talked about a month and a half or so ago, if we had done a full 1 cent, that could have doubled the revenue stream from sales tax. Or if we had done a half a cent, that would have been another $10 million a year. So those kinds of monies could go a long way toward paying salaries, toward finishing building parks that we haven't started yet. A lot of capital projects that have been put on the back burner because the money hasn't been there to do them.
So can you reallocate how money goes to the city with sales tax, or do you absolutely have to increase the sales tax for?
We have no control over that.
Okay.
So and that's true in every jurisdiction.
Yeah. Okay.
1 cent of the money that goes to the county and the state stays with the local jurisdiction, whether it's
Okay. All right. So So are you in favor then of raising the sales tax for?
No, well, basically, in order to do that, the council had a discussion a couple of months ago.
Mhm.
There's two ways you can do it. Either the city could choose to put that on the ballot and let the voters decide, or citizens could do an initiative and request to put it on the ballot. They'd have to gather signatures and that sort of thing. So I was in favor of the city putting the sales tax measure on the ballot and letting the voters of Folsom decide if they wanted to do that.
Okay, I know there was something back in 2018 where this was tried. I think that's when it was. Do you think we're in a different spot now? Do you think there's been more education? Do you think people are more apt to vote for something like that?
When the last sales tax measure was discussed, it was predominantly at the request of Ernie Sheldon, and the use for that money was basically going to be parks. It was going to be parks and rec, trails. That's what the objective of that measure was to be. And because of the way that it was worded, there's two different ways you can go about a sales tax measure. If you specifically list all the projects and are very, very specific about where the money will be spent, you have to meet a 2/3 threshold. What we were talking about most, and we didn't meet that. And in Folsom, it would be extremely difficult for anything that requires a 2/3 to pass for that to actually happen in Folsom. We've never gone to 2/3 on Measure A, which is the transportation sales tax. That's back up again this year. That's been passed 2 other times, but it didn't meet 2/3 in Folsom, but we benefit from it because it's a countywide tax. So other jurisdictions did support it, at a higher than 2/3 threshold. So what we had talked about was not being project specific, and doing it in that manner allows you you only have to pass by 50% plus 1. That was one of the reasons for doing the survey that happened earlier this year. It was to find out if Folsom residents are in fact happy with the services and the amenities that we have here in town. And if so, would they be willing to pay an additional 0.5 cent or 1 cent sales tax in order to continue to fund those amenities and services that we have.
And what was the result of that survey?
The result of that survey was that, and it was actually the people that conducted the survey were very, very surprised because the happiness level in Folsom was pretty much off the charts by comparison to other jurisdictions that they've done similar surveys for. Better than 80% of the people are very, very happy residents of the city of Folsom, happy with public safety, happy with our parks and amenities, happy with the overall condition of our roadways. They're just happy campers.
Mm-hmm.
And based on that data, we were getting numbers approaching 50% of the people that were polled or that responded to because some of the surveys were on paper and some were by phone. So for us to be getting pretty close to 50% under those circumstances, by comparison to the way those polls tend to work, we could have been in very, very good shape with marketing and talking up how the city would benefit from that. So I think we probably had a good shot at it passing, but my colleagues didn't want to put it on the ballot. So,
okay.
Well, 2 of us did, but the other 3 did not. And we would have needed at least 1 other vote, if not 2.
Okay. Is that a Hello Kitty mug that you have right now?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. I just want to make a note of that.
It was a birthday present from a very close friend several years ago, and it's my favorite mug.
Oh, that's good. I have favorites too. All right. Well, let's talk about happiness in Folsom. You mentioned the results of the survey, them being surprised, off the charts. Happiness is with things like public safety. Yet I know that one of the topics of conversation in this race is public safety, and some are saying, we need more police. There's a, increase in more crimes in our city, and it's hard to know. I'm hearing 2 sides of this conversation. It seems to me, just as an everyday every man, every human, that yeah, that most people are happy. But do we have an increasing crime problem? Is there something we should worry about? Do we need to increase our police force? What are your thoughts on this?
Um, yes, it would be super nice if we could hire more police officers. Simply for the reason that the city of Folsom is still growing. There's still construction happening in Folsom Ranch, and that's going to continue for another 12 to 15 years. So because the population is increasing, yes, it would be great if we could hire additional police officers so that, you know, the police officers that we have now are not as overworked as they are. But you have to keep in mind that despite the fact that we are understaffed by comparison, one of the statistics that they look at is the number of police officers per 1,000 people. So if you look at those statistics across the United States, yes, we are understaffed, and we have less police officers than we did, 15 years ago, prior to the 2007 recession. The good news about that is that despite the fact that we are understaffed, Folsom is still one of the safest places to live in California. So, and that is a combination of the efforts of our police department and the fact that our residents pay attention. We have a lot of people that will immediately, if they see something, they will say something.
Yeah.
And neighbors watch out for one another. And I think that contributes to the general safety that we see here in Folsom.
Yeah.
The other side of public safety is the fire department, and we are in the design phase right now, and there's actually civil site work going on for the new fire station that will be constructed in Folsom Ranch. So we have budgeted for additional positions in the fire department so that once we get that station built, well, in advance of completion of it, those firefighters will actually be on board and up and ready to go.
Yeah, good. Now, this is the first time we've done district elections. Which district are you representing?
I am in District 5.
District 5, thank you. And can you give everybody an idea of what District 5 encompasses?
It's basically Willow Creek Estates, Lexington Hills, the Parkway, and it goes down a little bit south of the college. So it includes a section of Broadstone as well.
Okay. Is there something for your district specifically that you say, this is an issue for me with my district? This is something that I need to pay attention to.
Well, again, because I've been on the council for a while, and I've lived in my home since 1984, if there was anything that I thought was in desperate need of immediate attention, I would have already taken care of it. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing about the districts, I was not a fan of the districts, and I don't know that I'm ever going to be a fan of districts. We were forced into this because of a lawsuit and because of the California Voter Rights Act that was passed a number of years ago that probably applies more toward larger urban areas that have ethnic populations living in pockets. But, if you look at Folsom, we're a fairly diverse city, but we don't have ethnic pockets, and we don't have any underrepresentation, in my opinion, on the city council right now. And that's with 5 people that were elected by at large. Having said that, now that we have the districts, it changes the political climate a little bit. And I think that the most important thing is for everybody to understand that it's vitally important that whoever sits on the city council represents everybody in the city of Folsom. It doesn't matter if there's a problem in my neighborhood that gets attention, if there's problems in other neighborhoods that are not being attended to. We are one city, not a bunch of different districts. And I probably shouldn't say this, but there are other jurisdictions in the region that have had districts for many years. And in my personal opinion, that has not necessarily served them well, because they get neighborhood to neighborhood battles going on. And homeless encampments in the city of Sacramento was one that I saw firsthand, because the RT board was being asked by the city of Sacramento to designate largely unused RT parking lots as sites for homeless encampments. And I watched different council members who lived on one side of the street or the other battle with one another, not to do what the rest of their council would like them to do. So I think that it's going to be very important moving forward that whoever's sitting on the city council, that they understand, yes, they were elected in a district, but one district does not a city make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate you having an opinion, though. We want you to have an opinion. That's good.
Oh, I do.
Yeah. Oh, I know you do. Do you feel like you're a team player, Kerri?
Yes, I have been a team player for a long time. We have to work with our colleagues on the city council. And as I mentioned when we first started this conversation, I have great relationships with other elected officials in the region, and that has served Folsom well.
Yeah, I love that. What do you think is your superpower for all of your years of office? What do you bring to the table that nobody else does?
Well, at
It'd
this
be
point,
ridiculous not to ask you to fill this office because.
well, I have an extensive technical background. I understand water, wastewater, pipelines, transportation, because in my other life, I'm an engineer. So that is something that I know dead cold, and that's what I've been doing since I graduated from college. So I bring a level of knowledge from that standpoint that, frankly, I don't know that anybody that has ever served on the Folsom City Council brought to the table. My years on the council, in knowing the city as well as I do, keeping in mind that when I moved to Folsom, there was only 11,000 people here.
Oh, wow.
So I've watched the growth take place. I've participated in the growth. I've been through 24 budget cycles with the city. I know what happens when we, get into things like recession, and know why we need to have a reserve that will help us get through bad financial times. And to me, experience matters, and I have a lot of it.
Good. I appreciate that.
If you don't remember your history, you're destined to repeat it. And I know what the history is.
Yeah. What's the last thing you want to repeat?
Well, it's interesting because we have people that will come forward and say, well, why don't we do this about affordable housing or homelessness, or you can pick almost any subject. And I know a number of years ago, and I was the one that pushed for this, when we were having the big debate over how the city was going to meet the affordable housing zoning requirements. One of the things that we did was we had a set aside for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And I said, what if we put a portion of that money aside so that people could actually use that money to purchase homes instead of, because typically affordable housing has historically been rental properties, so it's apartments. And I said, well, how about we save a portion of that money so that, we can provide down payment assistance or something like that. And it turned out that exactly zero use was made of that money. So when it's happened, and then it was brought up again relatively recently that, well, why don't we do that? And I said, well, you know what, I was the one that advocated for it 15 years ago, and it didn't work. So, I don't see the point in, trying to redo that mistake. We ultimately unwound that particular portion of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Okay. So that's just one example.
Yeah, no, that's good. I appreciate that. Can we talk about growth for a minute?
Sure.
So obviously Folsom is growing south of 50. When Measure W was passed in 2004, we agreed, I think near 70% of Folsom said that would be a good idea. In recent days, I've heard some murmurs here and there about even expanding beyond those borders. And I'm curious what you think about that.
You mean, would we go south of White Rock?
Would we go south of 50? Yeah. Would we go into that area beyond White Rock or wherever?
Well, actually, we already did, because we did annex, I don't remember the total number of acres. It's 60 or 70 acres that are on the other side of White Rock Road, at Scott Road. And Scott Road is actually in the process of being realigned. But that property was annexed south of White Rock Road to be the future site of the Corp Yard once we move it from its current location.
Is there a date for that? To move the Corp Yard?
Not yet. It's probably, if I had to guess, it's probably 5 or 6 years down the road.
Okay.
And then once that plan kind of gets into motion, then there will be a discussion about what the city will do with the property that the Corp Yard currently sits on, because that's basically on Lake Matoma.
Right. Okay, so let's just talk about growth in general then. Besides what's happening south of 50, but we move the Corp Yard, so then that opens up a whole new area where there's discussion for how that river property is utilized. And this has been heated over the last few years. And I know people on both sides, some saying, wonderful for economic development, developing the bluffs, retail space. And then there's others that are saying we need to hunker down and protect it, and nature and families, or what saith you?
Well, we're not to that point yet. And one of the other roadblocks that the state of California has put in place in recent years is that government-owned property. The state of California is trying to force government agencies, if they declare property to be surplus, that they don't excuse me, they don't need it anymore and they want to sell it, it has to first be offered to people that will build affordable housing. So that could throw a little bit of a glitch into that future discussion.
Okay.
So, but if you want to go back to what could or could not happen south of White Rock, I don't know if you were here when we got the sphere of influence to go south of the freeway, but what would have to happen in order for anything to happen there, that's in our Folsom plan area. So when we take a 150,000 foot view of the city of Folsom, we look at what may or may not happen south of White Rock Road. But again, we don't own that property. That's held by three different property owners, as I understand it, that are actually adjacent to White Rock Road. And in order for the city to do that, the property owners would have to be willing, for one thing, and the city would have to go through a very specific process, ultimately getting approval of a sphere of influence from LAFCO, which is the local area formation commission. That's a regional commission, and then discuss whether or not that property and what part of it would ever be annexed to the city of Folsom. So that would take many years to do.
Is it something that you're in favor of if that did happen?
I'm pretty neutral on it right now. I know that some of that property is ranch land, and there's cattle being grazed down there. Whether that landowner would, well, I think that the property owner actually would prefer to be actually a Folsom resident, because they're unincorporated Sac County. There's another landowner down there that would probably also like to have a 95630 zip code, but they haven't really come forward with any plan for what would or would not happen there. So I'm not hearing about we did hear about one possible project for healthcare related development of a portion of it, but the rest of it, no one has said what they would like to see happen to it in the future.
Okay. Switch gears. Traffic is also a topic of conversation, and issues that come along with traffic, besides even congestion, but traffic violations and so forth being on the rise. What are your thoughts about how we're doing in the city of Folsom with traffic?
Well, traffic actually, since the pandemic, this is just my personal observation because I'm typically in Folsom all day. traffic seems to have decreased a bit since the pandemic. I think there's a lot more people that are still working from home. So there's not as much driving around during the course of the day. Do I think people are driving too fast and running red lights and driving very, very irresponsibly? Yes. And it's been my lecture at the end of every council meeting for the last 24 years. I see it all day long. But then I also find it amusing when somebody does get pulled over for a ticket, whether it's for speeding or running a stop sign or, God forbid, a cell phone violation. The first thing that happens is they end up going on, on one of the local social media sites and complaining about it. So, my feeling is that if you're speeding, you need to get a ticket, and you won't be speeding behind me because I don't ever drive above the speed limit. It drives my friends crazy. And if I happen to be in their car and they're speeding, they hear about it. So it's, it's dangerous. And there's been, this was a couple of years ago now, but we went through a couple months span where there were 3 fatal accidents because, in one case, well, possibly in 2 cases, alcohol was involved. And then in other cases, it's just people not paying attention and running red lights at major intersections. And, that's, you're not going to get through that unscathed very frequently.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know there's been talk about increased traffic and what are we going to do? Well, the plan is, probably the most amount of traffic that we have is along East Bidwell. And it tends to be, at least it tends to be in the morning and the afternoon. Those are our highest traffic counts. And now with the development of Folsom Ranch south of 50 and the present lack of retail, which means that if you want to go to the grocery store, you have to come north of the freeway. Well, the plan, and again, these are in design stage, is that there will be another interchange at Empire Ranch Road. Excuse me. There will be another interchange at Empire Ranch Road and Oak Avenue. Empire Ranch Road is further along in the design than Oak Avenue is, but that hopefully will alleviate a lot of the traffic on East Bidwell, particularly with, the freeway overcrossing. And if Measure A passes, which is the transportation sales tax measure that is on the ballot for November, if that passes, the city of Folsom will be getting quite a chunk of money for moving forward with construction of both of those interchanges.
Okay.
And I think that will alleviate a lot of it. But most of the rest of the traffic problems that we have are because of people not driving responsibly.
Yeah. Is one of the answers to the not driving responsibly increased law enforcement?
There are police officers out there, and yes, if we had more police officers, then we could have more people assigned to traffic. So obviously, yes.
Okay. All right. What do you think is the greatest area of improvement that is yet to be tackled here for our city?
In general,
Mm-hmm.
we have a lot of parks that have been planned that haven't either been completed or are old enough that they're in need of some rehabilitation. And I'd like to see that happen. We've got 55 or 56 miles of trails in the city of Folsom, and many of those have been in place for quite some time. And there's improvements to pavement that could be made. I did have somebody contact me recently about the condition of the medians along Folsom Boulevard. And I think part of that is it's a combination of drought, so that we've got, some things that are not being irrigated that we didn't anticipate that we need to irrigate them. But there's cleanup that needs to happen. And it's not even in older neighborhoods. It's really all over the city. I'd like to have some more police officers. I would like to, in the rainbows and unicorns universe, it'd be really nice for the city to have another parking structure in the historic district. But parking structure now, ballpark estimate is probably $30 million, and that's $30 million we don't have. And and it'd be really nice if we could actually get the existing parking structure in the historic district if we get people to actually park in there.
I wish we had more time to talk about that issue. We should meet at a restaurant. Do you know of any good restaurants we could meet at and talk about parking sometime?
Yeah, we could meet at yours, or we could meet at mine.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. Yeah, that was very kind of you to put my restaurant first in that conversation.
No, and of course, for your restaurant, we could park at the parking structure, and at my restaurant, we actually have plenty of parking. So come on over.
Yes. Yeah, we could park in that garage, which is not, it's so funny. Folsom, distinctive by nature, a walking community. And you don't have to walk that far from that garage to my place.
No, it's honestly, it's a beautiful parking structure. I don't know if you were here when we did the ribbon cutting for that building.
Yeah.
It was a Wednesday afternoon, 2:30 in the afternoon, and it was about 105 degrees, and about 2,000 people. I'm not kidding. 2,000 people showed up for the ribbon cutting for that parking structure.
Oh my.
So, we love stuff in Folsom, but,
Yeah.
And part of it, I think, is because I grew up on the East Coast where you actually do walk.
Yeah.
And it's not that hard to park in the parking structure. And we can probably count the only time, and I'm sure you know this better than just about anybody, but the only time the parking structure is ever full is if there's an event on Sutter Street.
Yeah.
A big event on Sutter Street.
Yeah. And they happen. All right.
And it's a constant reminder because we have the counters that tell you how many spaces are available in the parking structure.
Yeah. Our clock is ticking down. Sorry. And my free Zoom is going to cut us off here. And,
okay.
So I have one last question. We're doing a section called Politicians Answer Medical Questions. It's totally unfair and fun. So I've had tennis elbow in both of my elbows since April, Kerri. What should I do about it?
You should see a medical professional. Do not seek advice on social media sites, and take some ibuprofen.
Okay. All right. Take that, Folsom chat. I don't need your opinion for my elbows.
You didn't ask them on Folsom chat, did you?
No. Kerri, thanks for your time.
Thank you, John. We'll see you soon.
Appreciate you. Bye-bye.
Bye.